Good morning, y'all. Happy Saturday. Hello, hello, hello. I am doing this live because I get asked often what my stats were. Hey, Laura. I get asked often what my stats were for becoming a CRNA. And so I'm sure if one person has that question, many do. So I'm going to do this video and I'm going to leave it on my page so that others can reference it. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Crystal and I am a CRNA. I am a business owner of Superscript Wellness. I am an author. I'm a dog mom. I'm a coach. Hey, PJ. And so I applied to CRNA school back in 2009. So it's been over 10 years. So things may be a little bit different now. I know the programs were competitive then, and I'm hearing they're even more competitive now. So that's why I'm doing these videos to, one, educate those who really aren't sure what they need for the profession, and two, just show you the kind of evolution as we go with the career. So I graduated with my BSN in 2002 from North Carolina A&T State University in Greensboro, North Carolina. I did not start off as a nursing major. I actually started at a small Christian school called Campbell University. Hey, good morning. And Campbell University is in Boys Creek, North Carolina. There was absolutely nothing there except for like a post office and one blinking stoplight. Like that's all that was there. So I started out as a physician assistant major there, and I'll be honest, I didn't do that great in my sciences. I think I got a C in biology. That professor, I'm not trying to blame it on the professor, but that professor. So I actually transferred school, not because of my grades, but one, I was not getting a good college experience. Two, my mother was actually dying. And three, there was like 5 Black people at that school. And I really didn't feel like I fit in. Like the Black people really didn't get along with each other. And I felt kind of very isolated and alone, and I was in the middle of nowhere. So I actually transferred. I got accepted into UNCG, and I got accepted into North Carolina A&T State. I chose to go to UNCG at first. A lot of this stuff I had forgotten until I read my old journals over the summer. But I actually chose UNCG. And I decided not to go there because they didn't have any housing for me. So I would have had to live off campus. But wait until I tell you what I'm about to tell you. So I didn't go to UNCG because they didn't have housing, right? So I was like, okay, I'll go to A&T. A&T didn't have housing either. So I ended up living off campus anyway. So I loved my experience at A&T. I'm actually glad that I chose to go there, and I had a great education. I was a member of Sigma Theta Tau. I got inducted my junior year, and I graduated summa cum laude with a 3.89 or 3.9 if you round up. And that was including my transfer grades from Campbell. So graduated BSN with a 3.89, 3.9 in nursing. Nursing school was not difficult for me. I'm not saying that's not the case now. I know there's a lot of accelerated programs that are tough. That was not my experience in nursing school. Nursing school was pretty easy for me. I was also, young. So I was the type who could literally just sit in class, listen, and then pass the test. So I really didn't struggle with nursing school. For the NCLEX, back then we had CD-ROM. This is how long ago this was. So I got, AOL used to mail you like internet minutes. So I had like 30 minutes of internet time every day, and I put my CD-ROM in and I would go over the questions. As many questions as I could in those 30 minutes. Because the internet, it wasn't you had dial-up internet, but I couldn't afford dial-up internet. I was a student. So CD-ROM internet it was, and that's what I did. And I just did as many practice questions as possible. I did books. I forget which NCLEX books I used. I mean, this was almost 20 years ago. So the NCLEX books I used back then are probably very different than what you all have now. But I just did as many questions as possible. And honestly, that's what I still tell people to do now. Just do as many questions as possible. Every day, look at questions. Have flashcards. Just constantly be looking at questions. Now in the present day with technology, you know, your phones are a walking book. So do as many questions as possible. After graduating, I went and I took my boards. I actually drove to Virginia to take my boards. I was living in North Carolina, but all of the testing centers were full. And no, that's not what happened. The computers, they ran out of computers. Like a bunch of their computers went down. So they actually canceled my NCLEX date. So I was supposed to be moving to Raleigh and starting my new job like in July. And then I get this phone call that I can't take my NCLEX. So I was like scrambling, and the lady at the testing center was like, well, you can come in. And if somebody else doesn't show up for their exam, you can have their computer. So I did that, and everybody showed up for their exam. So I was like, SOL. So I started calling around to centers to see if I could go test out somewhere else. And I ended up having to drive to Danville, Virginia to take my boards. Took my boards. I'm the type of person, I don't encourage this. I don't even know if I should tell y'all this, but I'm the type of person that I want to see how hard this test is going to be. So I'm trying to go through it as fast as possible. I don't suggest you do that. Don't do that. I passed, but yeah, just take your time. Take your time, read the questions thoroughly. And my computer actually shut off at 75 questions. And back then you did not get your results right away. So I left kind of feeling like, okay, I think I passed, but I really wasn't 100% positive. I ended up moving. I moved to Raleigh to get ready to, no, I moved to Cary, North Carolina to get ready for my new job. And then I would call the 1-800 number like every day. And they would either read you off a number saying you had passed your NCLEX, or they would say no information is available for that applicant. So I did that every day for like 2 weeks. And finally, one day I called and they were like, RN number, blah, blah, blah. And they read off my nursing license number. So from there, I started in the med-surg ICU at Rex Hospital. And that was a 20-bed ICU, medical and surgical patients. They are not a level 1 trauma center. They're a level 2, I believe. We got some pretty sick patients. We got a lot of DKAs. We got a lot of septic patients. We had to prone a lot of our patients. We'd get flu patients. We'd get some post-surgical patients because it was med-surg ICU. We got some neuro. I wasn't big on neuro. I didn't like neuro. I started out orienting on day shift, and then I was hired for nights. So I went to night shift, and I worked there for about 1.5 years. I was very unhappy. I was in a very dark time in my life, and I didn't even realize it. I was very depressed, actually. And I took the GRE. The hospital actually was offering a GRE courses for nurses who wanted to go on to grad school. So I took a GRE. And I forget what I got. The grading is actually different now. I might still have my old GRE score somewhere. But I think like I got like a 305 or something. And then like a 4.5 on the writing, I think. And so actually I probably could have applied to CRNA school then, but I didn't. I didn't feel smart enough. I didn't feel like I had the experience. I didn't feel confident in myself and my skills, even though looking back, I actually had what it took, but mentally, I wasn't there. I probably would have failed out of school, in all honesty. So I started travel nursing after 1.5 years. And I did ICU travel nursing for I did ICU and I did step down for about 5 years. In the interim, I did applied to East Carolina University to their nurse practitioner program, their adult, what was it? I think it was their adult acute care nurse practitioner program, and I got in. I began taking courses online. Yeah, it was online. This was like 2005. So I had been a nurse for 3 years by then. I had plenty of ICU experience. I had my GRE scores. I was like, I'll just go to nurse practitioner school. So I took those courses. I got all A's in all my grad school courses. And then I was like, I'm not going to be happy being a nurse practitioner. This is not something that I had always wanted to do. I'm kind of just like doing it just so I don't have to be an ICU nurse anymore. But I'm not passionate about it. And I didn't think that was fair. That wasn't going to be fair to my patients or to myself, right? So I actually, I didn't withdraw. I took a leave of absence from their acute care nurse practitioner program. And then in 2007, I bought a house in Greenville, North Carolina, and I was kind of comfortable. Like, I had a nice car, I had a nice house, I was taking vacations. I really wasn't thinking about going back to grad school. I had friends, like I was going out, I was socializing. So I kind of put grad school on the back burner. And then my brother Tyrone was actually like, I thought you wanted to be a CRNA. Like, what are you doing? He was at LPN, and he was actually going back for his RN. And so he's the one who kind of encouraged me to get back on track. By then I was 27. And although I was making good money, I was making probably like $90,000 a year as a traveler. This, again, was like 15 years ago. And I wasn't saving my money. I was spending it on, I don't even know, stuff. Mostly cars. I have a thing about cars. So I was spending it on cars like every 6 months, getting a new car. So my brother encouraged me to go back to CRNA school. I actually re-enrolled in ECU to take a couple more grad school classes. And I was like, maybe I should finish my nurse practitioner and then apply to CRNA school. But I was like, why would I do that? So actually, I had a 4.0 in grad school courses. I had like 6 or 7 grad school courses I had taken for nurse practitioner. And so I had a 4.0. So we started out with a 3.89 from BSN, and now I have a 4.0 in grad school. My GRE scores were still good at that time. I think I for CRNA school, I think I retook the GRE just to see if I could score any higher, and I actually scored worse. So I was like, okay, don't use that score. So we used I used my old score to start applying to CRNA programs. I wrote down a bunch of programs that I was going to apply to. I had 7 on my list. Oh, I'm sorry, Ryder. I didn't know he was under me. I just kicked my dog. Lord. He's right underneath my feet. So I actually wrote down 7 schools. UPenn, UMDNJ, which is now Rutgers. There was some school in Georgia or South Carolina. I think it was the Medical University of South Carolina. I honestly can't remember. Raleigh School of Anesthesia, which I think is all UNCG now. Wake Forest, because I was in North Carolina at this time, so I was really hoping that I'd get into a school in North Carolina. Wake Forest, ECU. Did I say ECU? I don't know. I can't remember. No, I didn't say ECU. So that's 6 schools, and there was one other school that I applied to, and I honestly cannot remember. So started applying to schools, and then got offered some interviews, and then my brother died. My brother Tyrone, the one I was just telling you about, who was encouraging me. So now is when I really started going backwards. Like, I was dating somebody who was just really toxic, and then my brother died, and my mind was mush. I actually had PTSD. I just didn't realize it, because the man that I was with, he was a narcissist, and narcissists can cause you to have all types of PTSD. So I had PTSD and was grieving the death of my brother. And then I started going on these CRNA school interviews. Horrible. I did really poorly. I couldn't even remember basic knowledge. Now, by then I had been a nurse for 6 years, almost 7 years. And they gave me an ABG, and I was like, I don't know. Like, again, looking back, I just wasn't in the proper mind frame. My mindset was all messed up. And that's why the program that I created, like my coaching, is all about mindset. Because if your mind is not right and you start interviewing or you get into CRNA school and your mindset is messed up, it can cause you more pain than you want, because you are literally like running on nothing but adrenaline already during school, and then you add like trauma and grief and sadness and depression, or just feeling like you're inadequate or you're not smart enough to even be there. That imposter syndrome can overtake you if your mindset's not right. So that's why I say more than likely I probably would have failed out. I would have failed out earlier, like 24, 25-year-old Crystal probably would have failed out. 28, 29-year-old Crystal, with all of the stuff that I was dealing with, I didn't fail out of CRNA school, but it was very difficult for me because I had so much on my mind and so much stored trauma in my body. So I went on 5 interviews. I bombed like 4 of them, to be honest. Nobody looked like me in the interview committee or as applicants. Maybe there was one or two other African Americans. So then I had the whole, you don't even look like anybody else here. What are you doing here? They are not going to take you. I literally had that like chirping in my ear. And then on the other side, they would be like, well, they need at least one black person, right? Who wants to go in with that mindset? No, you need to go in there and say, listen, I know I got what it takes, and I'm about to show this interview committee. But I didn't have that back then. Again, that's why I created my program, because I help you get that. So my last interview was in Newark, New Jersey at UMDNJ. By then I was like, literally, I wasn't even present in my body. I was a shell of a person. The guy I was with, he had literally like taken my soul. And I stayed. I was part of the equation as well. I stayed. And when I got to that interview, I really didn't care anymore. I was just like, I had gotten so many no's. I had lost my brother. I was just not in a good mental space. I hated being an ICU nurse. I would cry on my way to work. I'd be like, I don't want to go here. I still work night shift. I hated night shift. I was just very depressed. So went to that interview, and obviously I impressed them enough that they actually accepted me into their program. I didn't get my acceptance letter at that time, so I didn't know that I was accepted until they emailed me, and they were like, are you coming or not? And I was like, what? My ex, he had gotten the letter and he had never told me. So that's what type of individual he was. So I didn't know that I was in their program until they emailed me. Thank God they emailed me. And I started in September of 2010. I moved to New Jersey. I rented out my house in North Carolina, which that was another headache. I don't suggest being a long-distance landlord. It may be a little bit easier now, present day, but back then, being a long-distance landlord on top of trying to go to CRNA school was just, it was rough. I did have a property manager, but she stole some of my money. Like, it was just, I went through a lot. I actually need to write another book, because I left out a lot in my first book. This is actually the second edition of my first book. But my first book, was very brief, very to the point. I skimmed over a lot of things, but I think now I'm actually ready to share more. So I'm working on my second acceptance granted book. It won't be called acceptance granted, but you know what I'm saying. So I moved to New Jersey in 2010. So my sats, not my sats. My O2 stats are 100%, I hope, but my stats were BSN 3.89, grad school 4.0, with nurse practitioner school over 300 on the GRE. I did not have my CCRN. I still don't have my CCRN. That wasn't as big of a requirement back then. Everybody needs to have their CCRN now. So if that is a question that you have, yes, you need to have your CCRN now. Do you need to have a bunch of other certifications? I don't strongly encourage it, but if it's something that you want, if you want your CSC and CMC and ABCDEFG, go for it. That's more money. But again, if you want those certifications, go for, by all means, go for it. I did not have my CCRN. My personal statement, I wrote about my mother dying from cancer and how I saw all the nurses take care of her so well, and how actually I had met a nurse anesthetist with one of her surgeries. And what else? Personal statement. Interview. My interview, they asked me mostly about myself. They asked me about the types of ICU patients that I usually care for. I do remember talking about Cleverprex. Is that the name of it? That doesn't sound right. Yeah, Cleverprex. Does that sound right? I haven't used it in so long. Yeah, I think that's it. Let me know if y'all have heard of that. I talked about Cleverprex. And really that's all I remember from UND&J's interview over 10 years ago. I know a lot of thank you, PJ. I'm like, because we don't use it. I don't use that as a CRNA, but I know I use it as an ICU nurse. As an ICU nurse, it was a brand new drug. So I actually went in there talking about Cleverprex because they had never heard of it. So I was like, oh yes, Cleverprex, blah, 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 blah. Yes. Because isn't it white? It's a white solution, right? It's like, it looks like propofol, if I remember correctly. So I actually talked about that drug, and I was like educating them about Cleverprex because they had never heard about it. So if you can think of something that maybe is cool that you use in your ICU, you know, throw that into your interview. Okay, good. So my memory is not as bad as I think it is. But yeah, so those are my stats for getting accepted. And let's see, my school cost at that time, I think it cost like $65,000 just for the program. But to live in Newark, New Jersey was very expensive. It was not as expensive as living in the city, like living in Manhattan, even though, you know, they're very close together. Newark and New York are like 20 minutes away from each other. But like I paid $800 for a bedroom, just for a bedroom. My actual mortgage in North Carolina for my 3-bedroom, 2.5 townhouse that I moved out of was like $750 a month. So I moved from a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, beautiful 2,000 square foot townhouse to a bedroom for $800. So that's why I always say sometimes you have to take 2 steps backwards in order to take 1 big leap forward. I'll do a separate video on like the cost of anesthesia school and how much you should save and all of that. But I'm trying to do as many videos as possible because I know I got off of it for a while, and I know new people are coming in and they have questions. So I'm happy to be able to answer those and show that if I can do it as a Black female, single, I did it all by myself. I mean, with the grace of God, but you know, like I didn't have a husband. I didn't have, you know, children and all, like I didn't have like this big, huge support group. So I did it by myself. So if I can do it, you can too. Don't give up. And yeah, let me know in the comments what else you would like me to create for you video-wise, and I will. Until then, I hope y'all have a fantastic Saturday and rest of your weekend. I am going to go shopping.